Hi friends, welcome into my channel. I wanted to talk about these two cards, the High Priestess and the Eight of Wands. I had somebody ask recently about what getting two opposite cards means in a reading. So really quickly, the High Priestess is she's a very stationary card. She's very inactive. She's in tune with her feelings, her emotions, and she's an observer. So she kind of just watches and waits and sees. She's a very spiritual card and a very intuitive card. This is like the card when you're following your intuition versus what other people might tell you. Now the Eight of Wands represent desire, passion, motivation, and eights in tarot a lot of times can represent power or taking back your power or how you handle your power or how you handle certain situations. So when you have these two together in a reading, the position depends. So if you have them separate, like if you're doing like a past, present, future, like if you have for example, a past, present, and then you have like a future card over here, this could mean that in the past you were stationary, not moving, or just like in a contemplative mood. Now you might, in your current position, you might be a little bit more active. One thing I want to point out, this is going to be a lot of information really quickly, but one thing I want to point out is that the High Priestess is a major arcana, so she is sort of an immovable, a lot more inflexible of an archetype versus like the minor arcana, which are just more like energies. They're if you can sort of think about the major arcana being rocks and the minor arcana can kind of be like the water in the river that kind of flow. Now, of course, tarot is completely subjective. This is just how I read them. But the major arcana are human archetypes or spiritual, universal archetypes that are present in the world. So one of the things that came up a lot is again, going back to position, so if they're side by side, that could be one thing. It could be like this was happening, now this is happening. Now if you get them, depending on how you shuffle and pull your cards, if you get them sort of like on top of each other, like they came out together, how I would read this, for example, is maybe you are feeling, or maybe the querent is feeling like a bunch of things are happening to them, like overwhelm. This gives like a feeling of like overwhelm. It could anyway in its negative form. You're trying to figure out what you want to do. You're trying to stay in touch with your feelings, but you got all this stuff going on and it's becoming very, very difficult. Another way you could read this is that something came in quickly without you having to try. For example, if this is for like a job, if you're asking about a job, it could be one of those things where you're just kind of going about your business. You're not really applying for jobs. You're kind of just being you and being in your own energy. You're focusing on what you need to do. And then suddenly somebody offers you a job or offers you something. So it could be like there's a very stationary or very subtle, settled down presence with like this other energy coming either at you or happening around you or happening to you, depending on the situation. Now, in the Rider-Waite, it's easy to kind of see. We'll go over another deck in a minute, but it's easy to kind of see this, why you would come to that conclusion. It's a little bit more easy to spell out. That's why I always recommend starting with the Rider-Waite, although you don't have to. Just a side tip, if you are just starting tarot, I started out using animals, decks with animals, because animals, it helped me read and understand what the cards meant, because I know how an animal behaves and I know how it might behave in that situation. So that's a quick aside. So if you're asking about love, if you get this in a love reading and you're asking about somebody's feelings towards you and you get the High Priestess with the Eight of Wands, I would even say looking at the card where this is showing up on either side could depend. All that matters. Imagery matters. So if you're talking about love and you get this coming out, it could mean that the person, either you or them, feels like things are moving too quickly, maybe. Like somebody is just kind of still figuring out their feelings, or kind of almost withdrawn. And they're not really, They're not the one that's progressing things. They're not the one asking you out. They're not the one making the phone calls or sending the text messages. And one of the people is doing all the work. And this could be also that the person feels overwhelmed in the relationship, like especially if it's coming at this side. This could be that one person in the relationship is still trying to process their feelings, but all this information is coming. Like one person is still trying to figure out how they feel, and the other person is like, let's hang out, let's do this, let's do that. It's like this constant thing where you're not really being allowed to process what you're feeling or what they're feeling. It could also mean, if it's on this side, I could read it, depending on the cards around it, of course, that if you're asking about like a future situation, if you're asking like what's going to happen in this relationship, and let's say the relationship is really stagnant and that person that you're interested in isn't really doing much, I would read this as things are suddenly going to change and pick up, that they went from a High Priestess position to an Eight of Wands position. So they went from a position of trying to understand the relationship and their feelings towards you to a very, very active position where they know what they want from you, they know what they're going, or where they're going, and it could be a quick decision. Now, whatever card comes out over here can indicate what that decision might mean. I don't have the Rider-Waite deck out here, but let's see, for example, if you have like the Lovers over here, obviously this is somebody who went from a position of still trying to process, not really active in the relationship, to being very active and moving towards a Lovers type situation. Or it could be, if it's something like this, like the Tower, this could be somebody who wasn't really active in the relationship, really trying to figure out what they want. They decided what they want, and they want out of the relationship. They want to end the relationship. So it could be something like that. So these two together, I know they seem very like opposed, but this actually is a really good combination for figuring out somebody's feelings. Now, if we're not using the Rider-Waite and we're using something like this, the vibe shifts, and I do think it's really important to find the right deck for you. This is the Night Sun Tarot by Fabio Lestrani. This is a very different vibe, and I do recommend having more than one deck, especially when you become a little bit more comfortable with reading tarot, because this is a very different vibe. So you have the Eight of Wands on this side, and so this is a different vibe from this, if you can sort of feel or see that. First of all, the deck itself has like a darker vibe, which is fine. That doesn't necessarily impact the reading, but the thing that impacts it for me is that the High Priestess on this card is looking at you. She's making a connection to you, and this one is looking away. So with these cards where they have people who are looking in different directions, I'll always follow their eye and figure out where they're looking, because that always means something to me. And especially if the cards kind of come out like sideways like this, or some sort of position, I always take a look at that. It's important to consider everything. And then of course always use your gut and your intuition. But the Eight of Wands on this card has a person on it, and she's looking directly at this person on the Eight of Wands, who also has the Lion, which in the tarot represents, strength. And this is a quick moving situation. So if it's something like this where there's an eye to eye, then obviously this feels more like something that is in tune. This feels like something that she sees that there's quick movement and she's okay with it. She's paying attention to it, so it means something to her. Now, if it is on this side, this almost feels like a distraction. It feels like she's trying to do something. She's trying to pay attention over here. Now the card that's over here, if there is any, can indicate what that is. But there's all this distraction coming out. And you don't even need a formal spread for something like this. Like, let's say you did pull these cards and again, I don't have the other deck here, but you're like, that's weird. What is this person, my corrent, or the person I'm asking about, actually focusing on? Like, let's say they're not fully committed in this relationship, and there's like, some distraction over here and a lot of stuff going on over here. They're having a hard time processing because they're being distracted by something. What are they being distracted by? You could just pull a card and put it there, and it will tell you what's going on. So in this situation, it would be like, well, this person is still trying to like transition out of a relationship, and they're feeling sort of like overwhelmed with all this stuff that's going on to the side. Um, in a career too, it's the same thing. If you have like a reading about anything else besides a relationship, it could be like you are trying to focus on something and there's distraction and overwhelm. Especially if the Eight of Wands comes on top of it, it's like, yeah, there's like this sense of the Eight of Wands, it's like all this activity and action, and you're kind of just sitting there like, you know, trying to focus on yourself, trying to get in touch with your intuition and trying to go within and process. So that is the Eight of Wands and the High Priestess. I hope that was helpful. Have a blessed day.